Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for taking time on a Sunday to join this webinar. I think as we get started, just wanted to give a quick background into who I am and why we're doing this, etc. Right. So my name is Vivek, and Alt Life is something that we started around a year and a half back, and we've been in intense process of research to figure out the right solution to solve for various lifestyle diseases. And over the next 60 minutes, I'll kind of talk you through the journey of obesity and other complications that could happen. What is the underlying reason why that's happening, and how do we solve for it? Also talk a little about Alt Life and what we do, and how you might be able to consider partnering with us in your journey. In addition to that, we'll have 15 minutes at the end where we will take a Q&A. So on your screen, you will see a Q&A icon. You can use that to record any questions you might have, and we'll cover that once we get to the end of the session, right? And, obviously this started as a personal battle, for my health and for the health of people that I love in my life, where we all started seeing signs of obesity, diabetes, PCOS, etc. And while I was in a different field altogether, right, we built a company that got sold. And once I came out, I said, hey, we have to focus on health. And that took me down a path of research and reading tens of thousands of pages and research reports, speaking to a lot of doctors and researchers, etc., to understand at the core of it what's going wrong and how do we fix it. And I think once we started getting credible answers, and secondly realizing the size and scale of the problem, I realized that, hey, probably this is something that we need to start, and we need to help people that are on this journey and struggling to find a way to get better health outcomes, right? So that's the quick background as we get started, right? And essentially, if you were to take a look at this, every one of us, when our life's journey started, were like the car on the left, right? Shiny, new, fully functional, etc. But over a period of time, depending on different kinds of choices that we made, right, the way we use, the way we abuse, etc., we will end up at various states of how the car on the right looks, right? And let's understand that lifestyle disorders in general are not because of a pathogen. It's not a virus or a bacteria that is impacting us, right? It is essentially choices we make, which leads to some parts of our body not functioning the way it should, which eventually, leads to us being healthy or moderately healthy, some part not working, a lifestyle disorder being diagnosed, and so on and so forth, right? So what is the scale of this, right? This is the Indian context in terms of heart disease increasing by 50%, right? Uh, uh, Diabetes, I think we're the diabetes capital, right, of the world. Hypertension, high numbers, right? And if you take a look at PCOS, 1 in 5 women have it. And 70% of India's population is declared medically obese, and many of us may not feel we are obese, but if you cross the threshold, technically that makes us obese. And the scary part, one is the extent of our population, and across all of these, our estimates from various research is we have around 250 300 million, which is 25-30 crores of our overall population of around 1.3 billion or 130 crores that actually are suffering from lifestyle disorders or are at a risk of one, right? So, that's the Indian picture. Globally, we are a population of around 7 billion. And I think we right now are at about 1 billion of those having these problems. And in the next 10-15 years, it's supposed to get to 2 billion, right? This used to be something that afflicted 1 in 20 adults, if you go back in time 50 years, right? But something changed, right? And now we're talking about 1 in 3 adults, and soon it'll be 1 in 2 adults, right? So it has exploded to humongous levels, extents, and we can see it, right? You walk around, count your friends, count your family, look at, people in the middle age, and unfortunately now even at a younger adult age, and you will see more and more of these manifesting, except nobody wears it on our sleeve and advertises it, but it's visible, right? So then, the question is, can this damage be undone? Right? And can we prevent more of this damage from happening? Right? And essentially, that was the question that we took upon ourselves to try and understand and see if we can answer. And obviously, we were looking for an answer that would be a yes. And happy to share that it is a loud and emphatic yes. Right? Everything that we put together, the understanding of the science, we packaged it as an offering. We did a pilot with people. You can see the results on the screen, right? I mean, if it's a diabetic, obviously from severely diabetic to, in control, right, with loss of weight, all possible in a completely safe and natural way, right, with the interventions that we provided. And similarly, people with high cholesterol, again, getting to better ratios, the body fat itself reducing significantly, leading to a reduction in weight. So we were sold. We realized that, all our research is right. We've tested it and we're seeing extraordinary outcomes. And now is the time that I think we need to take it out and package it and kind of make it available to all the people that could take advantage of a solution like this, right? So, obviously takeaways: 1 in 2 adults globally are at a risk or are already suffering, right? So it's a problem of huge magnitude. Second, there's no known cure, right? Almost anything that is available to us is, symptomatic, right? It is ineffective medication that helps reduce the, symptoms, but the underlying problem continues to be the case, right? And as with anything, obesity is a path that takes us to further complications, as time goes by. And eventually, if some of those complications do come, there are higher chances of an early death, right? Significantly tying in with our vision, this needn't be the case, right? We have to fix this problem of obesity, and it is fixable, right? So, like to kind of throw out a couple of questions to all of you. And, I know there are things we've tried, right? What do we believe? Is obesity because we eat too much and there's a lack of self-control, right? Is it too many calories in, not enough burning of the calories? Is that the reason that we gain weight? Just want to get a quick opinion from you guys. You'll see a poll come on your screen. Please do choose the choice that you believe to be true. Okay. So let's see what we believe. I think 38% say it's true, right? 63% believe it's false, right? And we'll kind of answer this as we go along, right? What about the other question? And the unfortunate part is, for a subject like these that is all around us and prevalent, the understanding around this and the advice that we get are unfortunately not right. And that's part of the reason why the problem continues to stay, continues to explode without any signs of being abated. And again, I think 78% people believe that this is true, and 22% are saying it's false. Cool. Let's take a look, and we'll find the answers as we kind of move along, right? And I have a feeling you will be surprised. So obviously, this is what is logical, right? I mean, there is calories in, there's calories out, right? As long as the weight is maintained, energy in is equal to energy out, our weight gets maintained, right? Whenever calorie outs are higher than the calories in is when, there is weight loss. And when calories in is greater than calories out is when there's a weight gain, right? And that in a way is reflective of, what we just saw, most of us believing that this is obviously makes intuitive sense, is probably the right way and the right reason that there is obesity out there, right? But before I get started, I just want to say this is a cruel hoax, right? This is not right. This is not the right way of framing the problem or framing the solution, right? And in the next couple of slides, I'll try to explain why that is not the case, right? First is, again, if you were to frame it, we are saying the same thing. It's a personal choice, right? Or a lack of self-control, willpower, etc., right? Because of which we end up eating more calories. So eating more and burning less calories, which is, moving less, right? And that eventually leads to, onset of obesity, right? And obviously, I would say almost everyone who's had a problem with weight has tried to reverse this, right? Because if this were true, if I eat less calories and if I move more, technically obesity should go away. And it does, right? I mean, you start restricting what you eat, and you start, exercising and walking and running and etc. a lot more. We do see that the weight goes down. But the problem is, as you kind of go through the process, there is an intense need for you to, or lack of self willpower, just put it for the moment, right? Which forces you to come back, and you'll feel like eating more and moving less. None of this is typically sustainable, right? And it's very hard to sustain, right? You have to push so many demands in your mind to be able to sustain. And there's enough scientific experiments done to prove that if you reduce calories and if you move more, it is not a sustainable way to take obesity out. But that being said, I think the biggest example is us, right? We've forever struggled, we've tried multiple things, and yet we have had success. And when we've had that success, we feel very proud of what we've achieved. But it's just a matter of time, and the weight kind of comes back again, right? And if you were to question, we can blame ourselves, right? We can blame each one of you, and the world anyway. People around us, our advisors, blame us, saying that, hey, the problem is you, right? You're not able to control, right? You have too many cravings, and you don't have willpower, and so on and so forth, right? Now, if you were to take a look, this is not how the body works. This is the first point I'd like to make, while it makes intuitive sense, right? Because it's proven to fail, and the reason is, right? And let's not read what's on the right yet. Let me talk about, let's say, right? We live in an apartment complex, and we have power. We live in a house, power coming from Bescom or our utility, right? Maybe our all fans are on, all our lights are on, TVs on, our appliances are on, etc. Now let's say the power goes, and when the power goes, you switch to your UPS. What would you do? Would all the appliances and the lights and fans that were working continue to stay on? Or would you go and say, hey, where am I sitting? I'll turn the light on there, right? If I don't need any appliance or the AC, let me switch it off. Why? Because you're trying to conserve the power so that it can last for longer, right? I'm assuming we can relate to this principle. Essentially, the problem with what we see above is that we believe when we eat less and move more, right, our calorie burning will be higher, right? But that is not the case, right? And the reason that's not the case is, let's understand that 70 to 80% of our calorie burn is something called basal metabolic rate, which means that it is the amount of energy needed just for us to be, for a heart to beat, for a blood to circulate, for a temperature to be maintained, etc. Right? So when we move more, the amount of impact that has is probably 10 to 15%, and obviously we can increase it by amping it up significantly, right? So what happens is, when the body feels that I'm getting lesser calories, which means it believes it is shifted to the UPS, the way it responds is because it wants to ensure availability of energy over a longer period of time. So it acts just like how we would when let's say we switch from regular power to a UPS power. What ends up happening is, various processes that consume energy will start getting dialed down, right? So essentially, if you were to take a look, while the input calories go down over a period of time, the output calories, which is your basal metabolic rate, also comes down. So essentially, there is no net gain. In fact, there's a problem, and I'll come to the problem, right? So now what ends up happening is, for example, your heart rate, to an extent, your heart stroke volume kind of goes down. Non-critical functions, you'll see extremities of your body feeling a little cold, etc., because it's saying, hey, I don't want to heat all of it, only the critical parts is where I want to maintain the temperature, right? The other thing that happens is, as we restrict ourselves, etc., our hunger hormone, which is something called ghrelin, goes up. Our satiety hormone, which is something called peptide YY, goes down. So it's building up, right? It's building up where these hormones control our behaviors, right? So as they get built up, and as your body kind of goes down, and the way to think about it is hibernation, right? Where people feed and then they kind of go, bears go into hibernation. Obviously, they've dialed down a lot of their activity, etc., to be able to conserve energy, and the body works in a very similar way, right? So essentially, a just by reducing what we eat and increasing, one, it is not linear. I mean, bulk of what we do is not the burn from exercise. It is just to make the body function, and what the body does is take that down, right? And obviously we'll start feeling a little of the impact. There'll be a little more of laziness or languorousness, and energy levels will come down, because that's the body kind of you know making us continue to survive over a longer period of time, because it is responding to the fact that I'm getting lesser energy, right? So this paradigm temporarily works, not sustainable. We all come back, not a lack of self-control. Our body functions in a way, it drives the way we think, and forces us, right, at a point in time to start eating again, right? So this is not a sustainable way, and this is not the right way to approach the problem, right? So going back to the quiz, I think I don't think eating more calories or less calories and burning more is a way to solve, and it's not the reason for a weight gain. So then the question is, hey, all this is okay, it might make some logical sense, then what is it, right? Why is it happening, right? So if you want to, let's understand the way the onset and the progression of obesity happens, right? The alternate explanation, this is a hormonal theory of obesity, right? So for some reason, let's say our insulin levels, and to an extent cortisol, but let me talk about insulin for the moment, because that is the dominant hormone responsible for this. Insulin is a very important hormone in our body, right? It gets generated in the pancreas, in the beta cells, in the islet of Langerhans, plays multiple critical roles, right, in the functioning of the body. For some reason, and we'll get to the reason, if it starts getting high, one of the roles of insulin is, it is the it is like the traffic cop, right? When energy comes into the body, what do I need to do with it, right? One of the roles of insulin is to store fat for future use, right? Higher the insulin indicates that I need to store fat and make it available for me to use later, right? It triggers a process called de novo lipogenesis, where the extra glucose that exists, the liver converts it into fat and kind of ships it for storage for later use. Now, when this happens, obesity starts happening, because that's the job of insulin, one of the jobs, right? And obviously, if you think about it from diabetes and other ailments, there are other roles of insulin that come to play. But specifically on obesity, it is higher insulin that ensures that it is taking and moving the glucose and converting it to fat and storing it, and that drives obesity. When we start storing more fat, like I said, your ghrelin levels, your hunger hormone increases, your lower peptide YY, and the other problem that was happening is something called leptin resistance, right? Which is the feedback loop around satiation being lower and not functioning well. And all of these lead us to eat more food, right? the behavior that this drives is for us to seek more calories. And when we do that, essentially, it goes back and feeds in and becomes a vicious cycle, right? And enough experiments have been done, not sharing the scientific details underneath this insight, but easy way to make a person fat, healthy, fit, inject insulin, the person gains weight. Alternatively, reduce insulin, the person loses weight, right? For example, the classic example for this is this case called type 1 diabetes. I'm not sure if you folks have heard of it or know the difference between a type 1 diabetes and a type 2 diabetes. But in type 1 diabetes, the core problem is that there is a manufacturing defect in those people, right? Typically, right, which is their beta cells are not producing insulin. So there's no insulin. What happens? When there is no insulin, you can eat as much as you want, but essentially you keep losing weight. And the reason you keep losing weight is insulin, whose function it is to balance and take the nutrition that comes in and store it as fat, is not there, right? You give them insulin, weight addition starts and weight loss goes away, right? So there's enough evidence which talks about the role of insulin and how that results in storage of fat, and it plays a critical role. And that's the way it should be. The only problem is, what if, right, we are making some choices that constantly increase the amount of insulin that we have, right? Because for us to maintain what's called homeostasis, which is an equilibrium point, right, there is something called as a concept called set points, right? Now insulin is one that maintains the set point for weight. I mean, why does our body temperature always be in a particular range, right? It's because if it goes lower, processes get kicked in that will increase the temperature, etc., right? It's like a thermostat, and set point are ranges or specific points where we want it to be. Insulin plays a critical role in determination of the set point of weight. Higher the insulin, more of the nutrition that we take gets stored as fat, and we start gaining weight, right? It's as simple as that. And similarly, in the previous paradigm, when we thought that it is higher calories that is leading to weight gain, what did we try to do? We tried to lower the calories, right? And when we said that it is we are moving less, right, what did we try to do? We started moving more, right? Helped in a limited way, but didn't work, right? And the weight all came back. Now, if we apply the same first principles, if it is high insulin that is driving storage of fat and leading us to become obese, which then cascades into a set of actions that again lead us to consume more and feeds into this whole vicious cycle of weight, right? Then we know what the solution is. The solution is we need to find ways of lowering our insulin, right? And one point to note here, and I'll cover it a little later, the more insulin we get, it cascades into another problem, right? There is this concept of resistance, which I talked about leptin. Similarly, insulin resistance is where the effectiveness of insulin starts coming down, right? And this starts coming down more from deposition of glucose, which gets extracted from the nutrition to various cells to run them, right? That starts getting impacted, which is another function of insulin, right? And hence, if that happens, your insulin becomes less and less effective as more and more gets produced. It's the way to conceptualize this is, think of an antibiotic for a particular reason. You take it and you keep taking it over a period of time, it stops working for you, right? That's because it no longer is effective, and you need higher doses and higher doses, because the effectiveness of that in your body is going down, right? Similarly, if you're in a noisy place, you can sleep, right? However, if you come home and if it's super quiet, even the smallest noise will wake you up, right? And the way is, when we are in a noisy place, we know how to kind of tune it out, right? And if you're tired, we sleep because we get resistant to the noise, right? Etc. That's the underlying concept. But essentially, this is the proven pathway that leads to obesity. And the good thing is, this is not about willpower, it is not about self-control, it is your hormones at work. And the way for you to solve for it is to, kind of undo the hormonal imbalance that's happening, right? So we'll talk about that. But I do want to digress a little for a slight while, which is while we're talking about obesity, we touched upon insulin resistance, but let's understand that there's a common pathway that connects all of these, right? So obesity is not just about, my sense of self is a little weaker. I used to look good, and now, I'm not looking the way I want to, etc., which is self-esteem and so on, which is one thing, right? But let us also understand that, physiologically, it is a risk factor that leads you on a path of multiple other lifestyle disorders, right? And now it's proven that all of them share a common pathway, and that's why there's an umbrella term for coined for this, which is called metabolic syndrome, right? And hence, it's just a matter of time that there is expression of some of these others, and you'll see many of these go together, right? People who are obese, typically who have type 2 diabetes or obese, hypertensive people or obese, cardiovascular, it's not because they're directly related, but it is because the underlying reason that's driving each of these is the same, right? And not just these, there are other lifestyle diseases like a fatty liver, it could be kidney disease, Alzheimer's, etc., which share a similar pathway. And in some way, one way to think about it is, if there's an expression of that pathway as obesity, the risk for any of these others is higher, right? And it's not just about looking good, and feeling fit. It is also about not letting some of these other diseases, kind of impact you over time, right? So similar kind of a diagram, obviously there's a lot of, kind of puts it all together, the pathway. But let me start from the insulin resistance, which we spoke about. That leads to, more fat generation, and we spoke about it, and that drives in some way obesity. But when that is happening, what also happens is there's some deposition of the fat that happens in your internal abdominal organs, right? This is called visceral fat, more dangerous than what's called subcutaneous fat, which is elsewhere in the body, right? Visceral fat not always visible, but typically if you have a central obesity, or your middle is higher, is where it is. One reason why that would be the case is that there's a higher level of visceral fat. Reason to be afraid: impacts liver, impacts pancreas over a period of time. Not good, right? Secondly, because you're storing more fat, there is more fat that is there in your bloodstream, being sent to different parts of the body. That leads to an imbalance in your what's called your lipid profile, right? This higher amount of LDL, your HDL becomes lower, your triglycerides become higher. And when that happens is where the risk of plaque formation in your arteries is higher, which eventually leads you to a path of impacting your heart health, right? And when there is increased pressure that happens in your blood vessels, right, and there is some amount of rigidity, right, and a lack of flexibility that happens to your blood vessels, is when it manifests as hypertension, right? Insulin resistance, which led us, I mean, higher insulin leading to insulin resistance, which was the main pathway to obesity, is also a pathway that leads to some metabolic waste in the body not being cleansed, right? So it could be what's called beta amyloid deposits, or tau protein deposits in the arteries of the brain, right? It could be, bad and weak cells that typically get recycled, right? Not getting recycled when we sleep, right? Which is what you see on the last line called autophagy. So all of these, it's a cascading impact, same underlying root cause. It's not directly obesity, but what's causing obesity, which is high levels of insulin and your hormonal imbalances, is the path that takes you to each of these as well. And if you solve for obesity, which is if you solve for getting to lower level of insulin, you protect yourself from all of these other things that could happen as well, right? And there are reasons and choices we make that lead to higher level of insulin, and we kind of cover that as we go forward, right? So before anything, I just wanted to talk about what I call a root cause approach versus a symptomatic approach, right? And the example I want to take is something that we should be able to identify with, which is, let's say there are, problems with my paint on the wall in my house, right? and I believe it's because of seepage, right? Obviously, I don't like this. I don't want it to be this way. What would I do? I'd find a painter to come and, or put an M seal or paint it, and in moment my paint looks fine, right? Similarly, you know, I fix it, and for the moment, while it's okay, it rains again, same thing's going to happen, and I keep repeating it. And over time, it actually gets worse. And you may realize that there's an independent problem, that there is some bulb that keeps, going fut, right? It's a short circuit, etc. But there again, what would you do? You'd go replace that bulb and put a new one. But if you were to take a root cause approach, what you may realize is, the question you will ask is, why is there water that is seeping, right? What is causing that? Is it a defective pipe, right? And if you realize that, you'll see that, hey, it's not only coming as seepage and impacting my paint, it is also impacting my electrical wiring, and causing my bulbs to kind of go awry, right? So if you fix the root cause, and if you realize that it is a broken pipe, and you do it one time, you'll see that, on an ongoing level, there won't be seepages, there won't be electric issues, because you've solved for the root cause. And I think that's the way to think about it, and we'll apply it to the subject of our current discussion as well, right? So I believe, and there is a movement that is moving towards this, which is move away from a symptomatic approach, right? Which is a band-aid approach, which is not solving for the core problem, right? If you want to have sustainable outcomes, predictable outcomes, really at a core improved health outcomes, one needs to solve for it at a root cause, right? And if you were to take a look, this is true, right? I mean, if you take diabetes, the problem is said to be too much glucose in the bloodstream. What do medicines do? They try to shovel the glucose out in artificial ways, right? And have side effects, etc. But that's not solving for the root cause, because your body is continuing to produce more glucose, right? And you keep more and more medicines to artificially kind of take them to and clear it and get the glucose levels in the blood to go down. But if you think about it from a root cause perspective, you would go and examine, why am I producing more glucose, right? What is it that I can do to ensure that the glucose production goes down, so that I don't need to do this problem? And kind of doubling down on obesity, right? Essentially, it is too much more fat in our body than is healthy, right? And that's essentially what we're trying to solve for. The symptomatic approach, like I said, is it will work, right? But it's not it's not the reason why you're becoming fat, right? So eat less, move more, burn fat. Will it work? Yes, it will. But if the reason that your body is producing more fat, you don't fix it, it will work as long as you maintain this, right? And the moment in some way, right, your hormones force you to eat more, or you can't sustain that high level of intense activity, etc., the problem is the higher insulin continues to be there, right? It will continue to produce more fat, and very quickly you come back, and it's faster than the weight loss for a reason. Because like I said, your basal metabolic rate has gone down, right? When you started eating less and moving more, right? Because to compensate for the lack of input, the amount of energy expenditure of the body also has come down. Now, what happens is, because of the hunger and lack of satiety, once you start eating more, it adds not to your earlier levels of metabolism, but to low levels. So the gap between what you've been eating and where your current body's metabolism is so high, that very quickly you will see all of it come back. And that's the mechanism that's at play, right? So if we have to take a root cause, first is, how do we stop more fat from being produced? And the way to solve for that is to solve for the underlying hormonal imbalances, right? And that's the only way we will be able to solve for the problem of, I don't want to be producing more fat. And let's also understand that the more fat is not because we eat more fat, right? It's not dietary fat that is translating to fat within the body, right? It is dietary, to a large extent, it's dietary carbohydrate that is being converted to fat in the body, right? So essentially, let's understand this in terms of choices, right? One, you don't become obese in a day. You don't become diabetic in a day. You don't get cardiovascular disease in a day. It's a journey. And this journey is typically over a 8, 10, 12-year kind of a time frame, right? And till a particular threshold is crossed, we will be told we are all good, right? But eventually, at some point in time, we realize, we get a sense that, hey, I'm not feeling right? I'm becoming sluggish, and so on and so forth. And obviously your dresses start becoming tight, and so on. And when you look in the mirror, you're not too happy. That's when, in the case of obesity, for everything else, you need a doctor to kind of do a test and kind of tell you that, hey, your HbA1c levels are high, your fasting blood sugars are high, your systolic and diastolic pressure is high, and so on and so forth, right? But the reality is that it's not, that's too late, right? The, what I call the gadbad in the processing, right, has already started, and that has been in play for a period of time, which is your metabolic imbalances, your hormonal sensitivity, your loss of what's called metabolic flexibility. And some of these are also your cellular health and function is getting impacted, right? Which adds to the whole process. Your body's defense mechanisms are becoming weaker, your immunity and what's called a gut microbiome, your stem cells, etc. Now, these are all things that are starting to go wrong, and it's a matter of time before they manifest as, excess weight and so on and so forth, right? So all of this at the end of the day comes back to choices we make, right? Because like I said, this is not pathogen driven. This is choices we make around what is it that we eat, when do we eat, right? What level of physical activity do we have? Are we stressed? And because stress is a pathway that kind of takes us down the same path physiologically, right? It's not just an emotional problem, right? How well and how long we sleep matters a lot. It's not about rest, right? The entire maintenance of the body happens when we are sleeping. And if we don't sleep enough, and if our insulin levels are high, if the insulin levels are high and we sleep well, even then our body maintenance is getting negatively affected, right? So two things: you don't sleep well, your body's maintenance is affected for sure. You sleep well, but underneath you have higher levels of insulin, even then your body's maintenance levels go down. And the reason for that is higher levels of insulin is translated by the brain to, metabolism is still going on, I'm still generating energy, right? I don't want to get into maintenance mode, right? So there are workers still in the office, right? And I can't start the cleaning process till the office, let's say, is empty. And then you wake up and life goes on, right? Obviously then your actual metabolism is revved up. The problem with higher insulin is then the process called autophagy, which is the maintenance of the body, doesn't happen well, which means weaker cells, instead of getting recycled, are remaining in the body, right? The deposits that I said in the brain, instead of being, cleansed overnight by what's called a glial fluid, are continuing to get deposited. And all of that are other, bad outcomes that we are on a path of, all because of, we believe that, hey, we are super energetic, we don't need to sleep, there's a lot to do in life, etc., right? Secondly, different parts of our body work at peak function at different points in time in the day, right? Very important to align the right kind of activities to when the organ functions at its peak. And just to drive home that point, having a slice of pizza at 11 a.m., what your liver does and how it processes it is completely different if you have the same slice of pizza at 11 p.m., right? It takes longer, etc., etc. So it's important to ensure that if there are any of those imbalances between activities that we do and the right time to do those activities, we kind of balance them, right? So this is a high level summary, right? And, at a cellular level, again, we need the right membranes to work well at a mitochondrial level, at a nuclear level, at a cellular level, which kind of control what comes in, what goes out. If we don't eat the right thing, right, it's like building a structure with rotten wood and hollow bricks, right? It'll get built, but it won't have the strength, right? So whether we use the right high quality ingredients, which we do for our structures, we look at what kind of cement do we use, what kind of food do we use, but we don't do that for a body, right? When we make wrong choices, those wrong choices result in the structures within the body, which is our cells and tissues and organs, not being built in the best possible way, which again impacts the way they function, right? So takeaways, I think one, you'd have realized that metabolic syndrome is driven by an underlying root cause, which is hormonal imbalances, right? With metabolic imbalances, in addition to, maybe cellular health and function and defense mechanisms. If you want to take a root cause approach, what ends up happening is, if you are heading towards a destination you don't want to be at, you're able to make a U-turn. But when you take a symptomatic approach, it is you continue towards the same destination, except you will be slowing the speed or the velocity with which you're going, right? Uh, uh, to have lasting and reversing effects, I think we need to solve for it at the root cause, which is, how do we ensure we rebalance our metabolism, we improve our cellular health and function, and strengthen our body's defense mechanisms, right? We do that, not only is it beatable, it's beatable in a sustainable way. Quiz time again. So, let's see what you guys feel about this. Obviously, we all deal with these problems, and let's see and make these choices. What do we believe about this? And I think, obviously, the world has gone topsy-turvy over the components that we eat. And I think there's so much conflicting advice, right, in terms of what is right or what is wrong, right? So eating fat is unhealthy is true, say a minority, is false, say a majority. Okay, let's move on to the next poll, please. Obviously walking is less intense, consumes lesser calories or energy, you burn less energy. And obviously intense exercise is more, by definition more intense, and we end up consuming more. Do we believe that one is better than the other? And there again, because I think the holy grail of the kind of formula that works, right, what choices to make, what not to make, etc. So walking is a waste. Again, lesser percent say it's true, most people say it's false. Okay, and again, we'll answer that as we kind of move forward, right? So essentially, we talked about the continuum of health, right, where there's a state of health and there's a state of disease, right? As we see the signs, our pendulum is swinging from one end to the other end, right? With the hormonal imbalances playing out, and with our cellular health and function being impacted, and our defense mechanism becoming weaker, is where the pendulum is shifting to the right. We made certain choices that got us there. The question is, if we want to swing the pendulum back, how do we do it? What choices do we need to make? Obviously not the same choices that got us there, right? The basically, if we have to solve for the root cause, we need to understand what pushed the pendulum to that trend, and what choices do we need to make to kind of get it back, right? To solve for the root cause, let's say if you think of obesity, we talked about the pathway, right? So if what you see on the left, we need to improve and regulate our insulin behavior, right? In essence, anything that can help us get to lower levels of insulin are choices that we need to make, while at the same time, obviously boosting our immunity, improving our cellular health. There is something called inflammation. I mean, I don't want to get into more technical detail, but there are different kinds of fat, right? And certain kinds of fat, right, especially when you're obese, that are getting collected, also lead to what's called inflammatory behavior. And inflammation, the way to think about it is like rusting of your insides, right? Bad. So you need to, and that's the kind of pathway that leads you to multiple diseases. So the goal has to be to reduce inflammation, right? And there's a significant role that bacteria in our gut play in good health, right? There are trillions of bacteria, 90% of which live in our large intestine, and we may eat anything. How do they get absorbed and made available for the body to take advantage of, right? So the gut bacteria, or gut microbiome, which is the technical name for it, the role that it plays both in a digestion and metabolism cycle, as well as in the emotional cycle, right? The state of mind is significant. It's new science, a lot of research proven that they play a significant role. And if we don't make the right choices in terms of what we eat, etc., we may end up with not the right representation of all the good bacteria that we need. The goal will be to build the breadth and depth of diverse set of bacteria that we need to kind of function, right? And these days it's called the forgotten organ, etc. Now, to reach all of these goals, which will help us move from a state of high insulin and insulin resistance to a state of insulin sensitivity and improved health and weight loss, etc., that translates to choices across nutrition, across, like I said, alignment with our 24-hour clock, our circadian rhythm, fitness, stress, sleep, right? All of these play a role. I mean, each one of them can lead to a delta improvement, but we need to kind of maximize all of them if we want to see more effectiveness sooner, right? And I want to underscore one point: nutrition, and the right nutrition and when we eat is more than 50% of what it takes, right? Rest of it adds on. So if you had to do one thing, I would say ensure you get your nutrition right and the timing of when you eat right. If you have to do two things, I would say get that right, get some, either exercise in, right? Some kind of, and exercise doesn't mean, pumping iron, etc., right? There are different kinds of muscles. We'll talk about what is needed to improve health is different from what is needed for you to, be strong, right? If stress is important for you, critical, because that's an independent pathway that leads to insulin higher insulin being generated. It's a pathway that gets triggered off by cortisol, right? Sleep, very important to ensure that, like I said, the maintenance, we have a clean body, right? Or waste starts accumulating. So if you were to look at each of these, I will leave it on the screen, right? Give a couple of voiceovers. And if some of you believe that some of this can help you make better choices and it would be useful, do send us a note and we will kind of send a summary of this so that you can see and how do you want to apply, etc. From a nutrition standpoint, two things. There are things that power our body, which give us energy. Those are what we call macronutrients. There are other nutrients that make our body function well. Those are what we call micronutrients, right? In the macronutrients, we need to go low on carb because it is not just linear, it is dangerously linear. Higher the amount of carbohydrate, higher is the insulin that gets produced. It is a direct correlation. Protein again leads to insulin generation, but it is not linear. We just need to find the right balance in terms of protein, and we need healthy fat. Right? Obviously, there's fat that's bad, but healthy fat is what we need to consume, which will ensure that our body structures are built well, right? And ensure we have enough vitamins and minerals that kind of come in, because they play a critical role in terms of stopping inflammation, etc. Fiber is very important, right? That is what maintains our gut health, right? And then there are complexities of balances between multiple elements, sodium and potassium, important to maintain the right balance to ensure you don't become hypertensive, and so on and so forth. Some things clearly which are bad, which you see on the right: processed food, polyunsaturated oils, and so on and so forth. And not only are we eat, what we eat, which is clear, we are also what we eat. So if we have contaminated raw material, right, which is chemicals in fruits and vegetables and wrong kind of makeup of factory farmed meat, right, it will impact us. Right? So similarly, alignment with the circadian, I would say two things to take away. One, see if you can, practice intermittent fasting, right? So let's say you open your mouth to consume something at around 9 in the morning, and by 7 in the night you close it, right? And if you eat the right food, right, this does wonders in terms of your insulin behavior and drives down your levels of insulin, right? Second, make sure the last thing you eat, right, and this includes a fruit, etc., is 3 hours before you go to bed, because that is when your body is set up to ensure you get the full maintenance happening. Because if you eat and immediately go to sleep, your insulin levels are high and autophagy won't kick in, right? So again, in terms of exercise, there's something we call slow twitch muscles. These are very important to activate these, but these are not the ones that make you strong, right? The ones that make you strong are what are called fast twitch muscles, right? Your biceps and hamstrings, which you should do depending on your goals. But the slow twitch muscles are by definition things that don't rest. They have the ability to continuously consume energy. And that's because they have a very high density of mitochondria that are there in them, right? So your heart, for example, keeps going on and on and on. And so does your diaphragm. Your breathing, you'll never stop, right? Etc. So it's very important to activate the slow twitch muscles. So one thing, at least 45 minutes continuously do a walk, all right? If you can build muscle, that's great. If you can improve your strength and flexibility, that's great. But if there's one thing, I would say go for a walk minimum of 45 minutes, because it takes a while for the activation of your slow twitch muscles to happen. Over exercising, not good, etc. Right? Again, like I said, stress independent pathway, approach it two ways, something that will help you calm down. On the other hand, maybe a counselor that can help you figure out why you're stressed if you're struggling with that, and help you weed it out at the root. Right? Sleep, not just about rest, about maintenance. Ensure one gets at least 7 hours. Between 7 to 9 hours is ideal, right? With age, people start sleeping less. Try and get at least 7 hours of sleep. There are techniques that help, and that's something that we probably will have a separate workshop or a webinar on, which will kind of small tweaks that you can make to help you sleep better. Right? So takeaways from this section, I think lifestyle changes are the only way to solve for the root cause. Right? There are no medicines that makes your insulin levels go down. It is what triggers them that you need to undo. There are medicines that make your insulin level go up, which, as you'll realize, is a problem. But those are the medicines that, let's say, diabetics get, and which makes the problem worse while managing the symptom. Nutrition critical, right? We put in bad material, we get our body structure is affected, right? Etc. Sleep, again, very important. The body's maintenance happens there. If we make these tweaks, right, weight gain is definitely reversible and sustainable, right? With that, I've come to the end of the what I would say the knowledge part of the session. I'll take the next 5-7 minutes to talk about what we're trying to do at Alt Life, and then we will get into the Q&A section, right? So as we started this, our vision is, how do we eradicate lifestyle diseases? Seems like a very grand vision, but I think much needed as well. But if you logically think about it, two steps. One, how do we reverse it for folks with disease? And two, how do we prevent that disease in coming into others? So currently focused on helping people get to better outcomes where they already have some problem, right? Whereas as we go along, sometimes we do intend to influence children, because those are the people, they know what the choices are and what the implications of those choices are. Our hope is the ones that follow them will never even tread this path, right? Our solution, we have what's called a Health Restore program. That's a program where all of the science and more, right, has been packaged together. So if you have a problem, we guarantee outcomes. It's completely safe, natural, but we made it extremely convenient, right? So that's one way to do. Obviously, each one of us a choice of what we want to do and how we want to do. The second, which I believe that people should take advantage of, is we've relooked at and reimagined diagnostics, right? It's right now a switch, either you're sick or you're not, but we built in a lot of diagnostics that will tell you where are you, right? What is the state of risk? How close are you to getting towards bad stuff? And I think that's a different way, and that's another product that we have, right? All the components, we believe food is, like I said, nutrition is super critical. We found the right balance between ensuring that the right mix of nutrients is there, and that's where we have a AI system we built that ensures that we get all the right quality, right quantity of the different mix of nutrients, both at a macro level and at a micro level, and that gets applied on our food. But as individuals, we want our food to be tasty, we want it to be variety-full, etc. And that's the way it's been designed. We have veg versions and egg versions and non-veg versions. So our hope is, when people eat this, they enjoy it, right? And they don't believe that it is some hospital food that one is eating, but at the same time it will ensure that your body is getting fixed as you have that, right? and it's 3 meals delivered to wherever our customers might be, right? We've got a curated exercise and yoga. So this gets done in our studios or online live, which is working well. All of these components are integrated. So it is not you consuming each of this separately. One program that includes all of this, right? Meditation and counseling, again, one is how do we help you calm down, and how do you work with you if you want to identify your reason for stress and kind of help weed that out. Like I said, the smarter diagnostics, we do 4 cycles, one in the beginning, one after each month, to understand our state of health, our state of risk, state of disease, and how we're progressing. And there'll be and each month you will see a step change in the kind of improvement that is going to happen, right? We have put together a team of all experts. So there are doctors, there are physios, there are nutritionists. So in a single place, you'll be able to get access to all the expertise you might need or questions you might have around improving your health. Made extremely convenient. Everything is at your doorstep, and doorstep can be home, can be office. Food gets delivered where you are, blood tests get done where you are, etc. And obviously there's technology that helps you personalize many things, helps you transact easily. At the same time, we also have a personal mentor, what we call an alt life coach, that will work with you through the program. And as the collective community, we also have various things that will help us understand this better. It could be workshops, it could be webinars, it could be events and activities that we do, all focused on improving health outcomes, right? So that's broadly what it is. That's a 90-day program. And beyond, depending on where you were when you started, where you ended up at the end of the 90 days, we will work with you to kind of have a custom mix of all of the solution components for what your goals could be. The goal could be ongoing improvement, or it could be management. Management meaning I'm good with where I don't want to become worse, right? Or, hey, I want to become better. Now, depending on various ailments and various starting points, right, you will definitely be in a better place at the end of the 90 days. But if you want to get a first rank, there's X amount of effort. If you want to get distinction, there is Y amount of effort. We will work with you to figure out, once we do that, a significant step change, right? What is your ongoing goal and what's the right way to engage? And it could be no engagement as well. You could just say, hey, every quarter, let's do the diagnostic. If we see something's going wrong, we'll come to you. Otherwise, go live your life, right? So we will find the right kind of engagement plan on a go forward basis, right? So, takeaways can be beaten. You can lose weight in a sustainable way. You can reduce your body fat. Appropriate lifestyle changes will drive this. We at AltLife have made it easy and convenient. We ensure we guarantee results, right? And we've applied cutting edge science, and it's all safe and natural, right? So you can choose to do it on yourself. We are there to help advise you if you need, right, and give you tips. Or you can become a customer of ours, and kind of we handhold you, making it very easy, instead of you having to research and get stuff done, to go through this process and integrate easily into your life. So you could live alt life and beat obesity as well, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. And obviously, if you want to know more about us, one request is, talk about us. We are a young company. It's less than a week or a couple of weeks since we formally kind of launched. I think there are people that need help. People that need help. Right? Talk about us, and happy to talk to your company, your community, etc., to spread the word. This is our website. We have a WhatsApp group. All our handles are Live Alt Life. There's a number, very responsive number, 828 any day of the week, or you can reach us on email as well. So that's broadly where we are, and a quick introduction to Alt Life. And happy to take any questions that we might have at this juncture.
Vivek, there are a few questions in the chat box.
Yeah. So if I were to take a look at the questions. Yeah. Currently operate from Bangalore. That's true. Any plans for other cities? Maybe a pared down version without the meals, but meal guidance and recipes. That's a great idea, right? Right now, in terms of operations, you're right. It's only Bangalore, and we want to ensure we succeed in Bangalore to whatever metrics that we have, and after that, we will start expanding. But I think in terms of the advice and for example, we could do that risk assessment for all cities at this point in time, right? Advice we can provide. I think that's a great idea and something that we should consider and kind of put in place. Thanks for that. That's the question, right? Iti, if there's something else.
Yeah, Saranya also has one question. Let me just.
So you can either type it into the chat window or there's something called a Q&A, right? And, you can quickly use that as well. So I'd like to take this opportunity while we're waiting for questions and while people type it in. Thank you all. Thanks for taking time. I hope there were some takeaways, some learnings that will help you in your journey. Obviously tough times out there. Stay safe. Focus on health, and if you have a problem, which is obesity for sure, but any other things that we talked about, we definitely out there to give you advice and help as well as if needed to help you execute that as well. And you can contact us across all the channels that we shared. Thank you once again for being a part of this. And so my vote of thanks is kind of done. If there are questions, I'll kind of take those. Right?
Vivek, there is one question from Saranya. That's what would be the typical metabolic profiling be like in terms of testing? And how would one know if my metabolic rate is low?
Yeah, I mean, so there are, there are two ways, right? I mean, one is you can go into the engine and figure out what is your basal metabolic rate and how much do you spend, etc. Or the other is you can take a look at, if look at the exhaust, right? If it's a car and figure out if there's a problem in the engine, right? So there are different kinds of tests that will help, and I would, recommend two or three. Right. One is, like I said, you can take the test we packaged together, which has all of this. But one, check for what's called fasting insulin, right? Don't go with the lab's interpretation of the number, right? You do fasting insulin, come back, and we will be able to tell you on one thing if anything is wrong, or if your insulin levels are wrong, right? Similarly, there are, I think, around 10-15 of these tests which typically aren't used, which will tell you the implications of how your metabolism is working. And we, happy to kind of help you figure out those tests. And there's a blog that will be coming out soon which will tell you what those are, right? You could kind of get those done, or you could reach out and we can kind of do our comprehensive thing and tell you where you are and what you need to be doing. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for taking time again, and stay safe. Take care. Goodbye.